Hello, Facebook. There's the 1 o'clock bell. I said I'd be on at 1, so I'm here. I don't know how many people are here right now, but I will, instead of just jumping into it, just sort of give everybody a chance to do that or get it in their headset if they have to. I know when I answer the phone, I have to go through that. Hold on, I'm putting in my headset moment that a lot of us experience, or whatever it might be. Maybe turn off the news, leave it off. So I've done 2 of these lives so far. The first one was more or less me just presenting some concepts, I guess. But off that came a couple of suggestions that led me to what I talked about last time. And you can see those linked on windandraven.com in my blog. I've linked those and also my videos that I have on YouTube, where most of them are more, could say, organized, you could say. I mean, I had a lot more intention in what I was doing, and I was ready, and I look, different as far as dress and all that. So those are on my YouTube page. You can find all that at windandraven.com, where I'm an online counselor. So with that in mind, I imagine most people, I see people are getting here. Hello, Kelsey Brook. Hello, Kelly Barton. Hello, Nicole, I think it says, yeah. And so anyway, so what I'm gonna do today is react to some questions that were posed, not directly on what I talked about in the last one with the whole gifts and openness to love, and then using that ocean model that I talked about in trying to talk about consciousness and the outside world being the sky, and the ocean being your conscious thought, and the floor of the ocean being the subconscious mind. What happened as a result of that is I had questions that sort of spiraled from it that were questions of other things. How would I interpret that in the way that I speak about it? And so one of them that I want to get to on this, there's been a couple of suggestions about being able to deal with your shadow self, or this other part, this subconscious, however you want to look at that, depending on how you look at things. And so that's up to you, but that's what I'm talking about, is that part, the sort of unexplainable why we do things, or the parts of us that we haven't repaired, or whatever it might be. There's lots of ways you can look at that. But so there's that, and then the question came to me from the Lightworker community. And now the Lightworker community, I'm fully aware of the Lightworker community and all that they do, that they seek to do. And so with that in mind, though, I don't really know the intricacies of their language, how they use things. And as I've pointed out in the previous 2 videos, the way that I use it is largely based on just the approach that I've had for the last, well, easily last 10 years, maybe a little bit longer, with some of the concepts were there, but not in this language. And then this language being really since the time I came back from a transplant, which was 14 months ago, after the cancer and all the rest of that. So then I sort of dove more into the scientific side than I had in the past. So that's why I have this scientific approach on some of the ways that I use these words, like consciousness and power and force and negative energy and positive energy and attractors. I'll mention chaos theory briefly just to identify it, not to try to go into it. Because there again, I know just enough about chaos theory to understand how you can how you get out of linear and you suddenly have a random event. And that's what that demonstrated in math. So then science was on board with that at that point. It changed a lot of things. It changed a whole lot of things. In fact, it led to AI and all kinds of things you could really lay at those early parts. These aren't exactly ideas that had never been considered, but it really took on shape there in the 90s, I guess you could say, and led to things such like at the University of Arizona, where they have a whole part of their school that is dedicated to the study of consciousness itself, which is such a novel idea, because that's what I say that I do. That's how I describe what I do overall within my counseling, you could say. So with the Lightworker community, what I don't know is all the language, and I know that there's always the potential that you say a word or a term that they have in their mind means one thing, and you're saying it in this other way, and on top of that, you're saying it around a situation that they even have another word for. And so at that point, what we sort of have to do is like we did in the other video, where I reminded us of the emergency in the world in the terms of how many lives at this moment other people are losing a loved one, and with an intentional way of sort of clearing our minds there to get us all focused on that. And then, as you recall from the second one, I asked us to let that go, but in that open space then to receive what I was saying sort of from an objective point of view, instead of subjected to what you already know. And I'm not trying to tell you, listen to me, unbelieve what you're saying, anything like that, but for it to make sense. I think the overall flow of it will make more sense if there's less resistance along the way. And at the end, if you don't agree with it, fine, comment. I'm not really trying to pose an argument, I'm just giving an observation. So then you have the spiritual community over there, and I'll call that the esoteric community. I often talk about the fact that in my work, I walk down the line between science and esoteric. And of course, esoteric can mean anything from spirituality to religion to philosophy to art, all these things that have abstract spaces. Again, we're back to chaos theory, that random attractor that it causes something to happen. Whether somebody's a particularly gifted musician or a particularly gifted whatever they do, or their physical body is such that it randomly is so much physically better, you could say, for playing a sport. Any of that, or the albino, like I pointed out the other day. What is that? Again, these are these things that sort of randomly happen, and that's the non-linear dynamics over on this side. So you have the linear dynamics, which a this and a that. There's a right and there's a wrong. There's time, because you have to have time to make sense of the linear world. We have to agree that there's such thing as called yesterday, but we never see yesterday. We're always in now. So we just accept that, and we call time, and so that's where time comes from. In our reality, I should say. I'm not trying to say time doesn't exist, but the reason we believe in time, like even right now, I said come on at 1 o'clock, right? There you go, linear thought. So I'm not saying you throw that all out. And certainly science, where they've come in now in the last 25 years since these things that I talked about, and further developed into what is now called data science, it's a quantum science that is even beyond quantum mechanics. It's in that space. Even when you say quantum mechanics, what the hell is that? You have quantum thought, you have quantum biology. Again, just like consciousness, it's applied to different things. But quantum basically meaning the abstract space, the non-linear dynamics. It doesn't always have to be a this versus that. There can be another variable that we can't see, but yet there's some kind of pattern that seems to make sense, but yet we can never predict it. Like science cannot explain when a drop of water is actually going to come. They've never been able to precisely predict that. They don't know why. They just can't do it. They also don't know why the drip forms in the first place. They don't understand that. Those are two things interesting about a drop of water that science is still stumped on. But so within that, I get to why I'm mentioning any of this, which is this lightworker question about what they're doing in the lightworker community. Apparently there's a little bit of, at least in this person's presentation of it, if I got it right, the whole question of how to be a light worker, which in my mind means that you have something to do with getting people to the light. And in my language, that would be power, right? Because you have energy. The universe is connected with energy everywhere. And energy is available at all times everywhere, right? And there's never any more or less of it. The universe has infinite amount of it. So it's sort of a dynamic you have to sort of wrap your head around. But with that in mind, wherever there is a energy, whatever the hell an energy is, it's never any less or any more energy. And you can't add not energy to it to get rid of it. It's either there or it's not. So when we have energy levels of things, negative spaces have less of that. You're going slower, there's less energy, right? So just with that, as it rises, it gets more power, right? So more energy, more power, you can do things. Think of a car. The more powerful car, the faster it goes, whatever. It's pretty easy. I think I made my point. So that's the whole dynamic of negative force, because force is when you're seeking to change something, and we talk a lot. I have whole videos on that on YouTube. But then the power part of positive thought, positive and negative. See right there, positive thought. And it's easy to say, oh, you should just be Mr. Positive, all through life. And that approach, if somebody were to take that like that, and sort of just not pay attention to the world, and therefore it is okay because they just bypass the reality of their world to create their own illusion to then step into and live and expect everybody else to somehow recognize that. I mean, there's all kinds of problems there. So you don't want to be doing that. You want to be able to address those things, that negative energy in your life as it presents itself, and be able to navigate away from it. And when I talk about navigating away from it, what we're talking basically about is in every situation, there is the fittest decision. What is the best decision? It doesn't have to be the right or wrong decision. Get rid of that linear mindset of a this and a that. There is no this or a that. It's all levels of. So which is the best of your options? And if you think you don't have any, you're blocking yourself from that. I'm not trying to throw that in your face. I should just right now say trigger alert for the rest of this, because I speak about in those scientific terms because it makes sense to me that way and I can see it. But I am steeped in shamanism on this side. This is where I started. And so the two work very well together, and I see the limitations of both at times. And that space in the middle is those limitations. And that's when I talk about studying consciousness, I'm trying to figure out that part. But there's, but that's what it is, another story. Back to the story, now where were we? We were talking about the light workers and the positive and negative energy. Okay, so if we're bypassing things and we're not addressing them, right? Here's where we get to the part of the light worker community, perhaps, and again, I'm not trying to be a light worker, I'm not trying to step on any light toes, or working essential toes here, and you are essential. I would look at that as like this. The good things in life, they have a lot of energy in them. They are, when you think of love and laughter and happy things that make you happy, it lifts you. When you laugh about the fact that you're whatever, you did some goofy mistake and you laugh about it, you rise above the goofy mistake and you can look at yourself. You're not laughing at yourself, you're laughing at the situation that you've wound up in. You're not getting caught up in self-judgment or anything like that, but you're lifting above and you're able to see the bigger picture that this isn't that big a deal overall. Right now, yeah, I dropped the ketchup on the floor and it shattered everywhere, but my God, whatever. It's just, I was busy, and look at it like that and sort of chuckle about it, airhead, whatever, say whatever you want, don't mean it. Don't mean it in a way that you're actually beating yourself up. That's another video. But back to the story of the light workers and so the question becomes, in this time, how do you address these issues that have some very real present in the linear 3D, might be your word, world that we either have to pay attention to, or we have to bypass, or do we focus on the negative energy, or whatever? And so I'm guessing that it has something to do with that, how to address that shadow part, that low energy part, as I would refer to it. Now, I'm not going to get into the full-blown spirituality part, I'll do that next. But just sort of merging into the other one, if we look at it with that power and force type of way of looking at it, force being negative energy and power being positive, it's forcing you to look at the bad things in life, you're attracted to it. Oh my God, it sucks, I can't get out of it. I'm looking down, I'm not able to see literally the light in this instance. So that's what that's getting at. And so within that, we would have, okay, well, how about your message be similar to this? Yes, there are those things in the world, but they're not, A, they're not out to get you. B, even if they are, what are you doing positively in your life to change that? And I'm not, this is partially me here, I'm not trying to make fun of you by saying this. Are you smudging? Are you doing some kind of clearing exercise? Are you, I don't know, calling somebody to say, do chakra work around my house? There's all kinds of stuff in the esoteric community for that, but it would be positive. Some people might say it's silly. Why would you do that? There's plenty of people would say that, all of them on this linear side. In fact, most of them probably would say that about if you said you're going to get your house work done, your chakra work done in your house, which absolutely to me makes perfect sense. But anyway, knock yourself out. But over here in that, you're making positive choices to help yourself. See right there. And it might not be ultimately the best thing that's going to help you. You might go to this person, this man or this woman, and they say this, that, and everything, and you feel fine, and 20 minutes later you're not feeling fine, and so it really didn't do much to do anything except maybe give you a quick high, right, or whatever. But in the long term, maybe it doesn't, but you still did it. And maybe now you learned that next time you need this work, and maybe it's not that work, maybe this person and I just didn't connect. You don't even have to say he wasn't good enough or she didn't do what I needed. You can say we didn't connect, because that's what didn't happen. That's the part that didn't happen. For whatever reason, either side did it. So just look at that part. Didn't connect, right? All right, fine. So that means I can find somebody else. There's something else I could do. Maybe that caused me to think about how much I like doing whatever, Those are positive moves. Those are positive. You're looking up at you're seeing the world and seeing what can be done instead of looking at the bad. And so getting back to the bad in that question, if you are a light worker and you're seeing an overabundance of negative energy in the world or shadow of the world, we're not talking about internal, that's next. In the world, why are you being attracted to that negative energy? What is going on there? What is so compelling about the negative energy, regardless of what it is you define it as? What is so attractive about it that it needs to be even addressed? You know, there's a chance right now, like I said the other day, a rock could fall from space and hit me. I could get coronavirus. I went out today for the first time in 22 days, drove around, didn't get out of the car, came home. That was my big adventure. But in theory, I mean, who knows? The wind blows by, the guy driving by me breathes out, I breathe it in, I get it, whatever. That could happen too. But am I going to sit here the rest of the day and think, oh my God, I drove by that guy? Or I can't believe coronavirus is out there and I put myself out there. Or what happens if I did get it? Did I wash the glove off? No, I threw it in the trash. I threw it in the trash. No, did I wash it? So now I'm stuck in this freaking negative energy space, right? What didn't happen is I didn't die. Fine, let's keep going. What is there to do now? Well, you've got a live to do in a little while. Fine, do that. That's basically telling you about my day right there. So, you know, this is the point of this being, if the negative energy is such an attractor in your life, what are the light things, the more powerful things, more power, more light? You think of a spark, that's a hell of a lot of energy right there. Why aren't you seeing those? Because that's the light you're working with. And I'm not trying to question anybody, and I might be totally off base with my approach to this. I might not understand this question at all. But if that were the scenario, what is so attractive about that negative energy in the first place? I might be asking myself that. And with that, we'll move into the self. So now you got yourself some negative energy on the inside for whatever reason, however it got there. Maybe it was that toxic relationship. Maybe it was the fact that, like, today, you know, state of Georgia telling me that since I spent last year recovering from transplant and cancer and all this stuff, that I didn't earn enough money to be able to get the stimulus package, so I don't count. So I'm not essential. But I put myself in that crack because in 1997, I decided to start working online. I've worked out in this space. I've detached as much as I can from society in that way. And really the only people I ever see are the Veterans Administration people connected to my healthcare. I don't have any regard for them, and apparently they don't have any regard for me. So we're good. Everything's fine there. And I didn't need them in the first place. So anyway, with that in mind, you know, go Steve, there's your little eagle coming out. But so now you got some negative energy in you, and you can tell I don't have a whole lot of it over that. At least not that I'm openly talking about. Of course, that energy is there, and I know that. I know that because I do this type of thing, and not because I don't say it like that as if I'm better because I do it. I'm saying that I do this internally with myself as an example of my own self-care. You know, I'm not second-guessing myself in every moment, but I'm to the point now where I can't even remotely say anything but the absolute truth in a situation, regardless of the impact, because I can hear myself not being this person that I want to be, and that's authentic and present and all these things. And I don't allow myself to do that, and so the filter comes off, which is probably possibly happening to some people with the triggering type thing I'm saying. So we have this internal stuff within us that we need to get rid of, or we're attracted to seeing. What is going on there? Now, this is the time when we talked about in these other videos about what are we going to do during this time. This is a great time to look into that. What are the things in your life right now that are going well? It's going good. Let's just think of that. If it's only one thing, think about how to make it better, because it's only going to get that much bigger maybe. You know, whatever it is, you know, if you have ice cream, you know, this time you're going to have ice cream with something else involved, you know, something else that's nice. I mean, that's a very simple and almost silly thing, but it's all about simple and silly, because a lot of these things are relatively simple problems, and we sillily just go along with them as if now I've got my little illusion I'm stepping into, and I'm just going to validate it constantly with my own beliefs that I'm bringing along with me in my backpack of my past. Good luck with that. You know, you don't do that. And so I even know in my own moment, right now, I'm sitting here in the illusion that this counts, that this somehow matters. And I'm believing that because I've had people that are watching it, but none of us mean any different in that regard. I don't need to take that and somehow think I'm special, you know? So again, I'm not trying to overemphasize myself to put emphasis on myself. I'm just saying, to be clear there. So you've got this stuff, light workers, if that's the problem, if there's too much negative energy in the world, if there's too much going on out there, that's out there, but in us, that's the time when you do the work. That's the time when you call the person maybe that does the chakras, that maybe balance them, do whatever they do, put your tongue in the roof of your mouth for an hour and wait? Whatever it is you're going to do, you're not going to go see them. It's a great time for everybody to exercise online stuff, especially if you need support like I do. Or not like I do, well, that too, but that I offer, I should say. This is the time to do that work, because all these things that I've talked about as far as what are we going to do in this time to find our creativity, find that creativity again. Be creative enough to find out what's better. Don't give in to your own notion that it is so bad out there and oh my God, I got to do. What you got to do is the good things to do. If you want those other things to be addressed, say yes. Right now, there's all kinds of shit going on in the world. There's everything from QAnon to Donald Trump to whether the virus is real or fake or was put here by the Chinese or people from outer space. I mean, there's everything out there, and I look at that all as freaking, as I do all of life. It's like the comedy of the absurd. It's like, you got to be kidding me at every moment. Like, even my physical body, I have no idea what's going on there. The heart just goes, and so does that. I just go with it on that. But, this is where you do that work. Find out what that thing is that's still bothering you, that's stuck in your craw, so to speak. If you're that person that is now seeing an overwhelming amount of it on the outside, maybe that's some of you inside that is attracted to that. And in this instance, you would be pulling it to you because you are attracted to it, and it gets you into those negative frequencies, and right there you're in it. And what happens sometimes is we get in that sub I guess level of courage, of having confidence in ourselves. We get down in those pride and anger and all these same words I keep talking about. And a lot of these things, I'll just say right now, there's men in the world right now and women that I keep up with because of the research they're doing. Guys like Hoffman in reality, and Chalmers in analytical philosophy, and of course David Hawkins and what he did with his treatment of energy, which is largely what I'm spewing now, because I've used that as my model for years and years and years. No reason not to. It's a freaking awesome tool. It'd be like saying we need to reinvent the screwdriver every time we need to do something, right? We're building on each other's shoulders. Maybe someday down the line, here I am talking great about myself, somebody will watch this that's a budding whatever they're going to be, and this somehow helps them. It's not mine, it's theirs at that point. And that's what it's all about. It's just like that. So, time to do that work on the inside, because if you're seeing too much negativity in the world or in yourself, obviously that is in you, and you're the one that can get rid of that. Now again, how do you get rid of that? Well, there is no such thing as not negative, right? There's this thing we call positive and negative, which is again a duality right there. We have to have this or that. But we don't have to look at it like that at all. We can just say there's just levels of, right? So there's a level of good or a level of bad, a level of positive, a level of negative, all these linear ways of looking at it. Some of them have the ability to be stretched, like love and truth. Well, not truth, but the way that we use truth, because we have this thing called the white lie, which to me is the biggest insult to the word lie, because we use it as a form of accepted truth, yet it tells us in its actual phrase that it's a lie. We're good with that. Talk about things that get into the subconscious, those bones in the ocean I was talking about. Wonder how those bones fit down there when it comes to how people are able to tell the truth. When it's okay to lie and count that as the truth, because you're doing it because of their feelings, or you're doing it because you're trying to cover your ass, or whatever. See, again, levels of it there. So we do have a level of truth, but in fact, there is a sort of yes and no to some things and that comes in the form of in religious spirituality most often, and I'm pointing to religion and not spirituality itself, because most of the indigenous, what we call indigenous traditions, be they Native American, or be they the Norse, or be they the Celts, or be they wherever they are, over in the Laplanders, all those in Sweden, whatever, those approaches, generally speaking, don't tell you what to do, they tell you how to live. They're an example, they're not a law in that regard. Now, there might be instances of this, and I'm sure there's going to be somebody down here who gives me a whole treatment on it. I'd be great. Educate me. I love this stuff. I study this stuff all the time. But you know what I'm saying here. When you get to organized religion, then you have canon, which is a fancy word for law. And it might be even canon law. It might even be called that. But anyway, then you have, brings us to the other part of this talk, listen to me, this discussion. And that is forgiveness, all right? So now we've got this stuff in us. How do we get it out of there? Well, we can maybe just focus on the brighter things and let our life in general get brighter, and that negativity, that space, you have more light. Just like you think of the current of energy going down, say it's 5,000 volts. As soon as it splits, it's 250, or it's whatever, half of that, 2,500 on each side. The energy itself has not changed, but the amount of it has. You have less energy, right? Because there's less of it. And again, you don't add not energy to it, you just take away some of the energies. But each individual little piece of energy, if there is such thing, doesn't change its value. It stays energy. So it's the level of. And that's where you get to this sort of nonlinear thought, things like love. How do you define love? You can't. You know, 'cause like I said the other day, we love a sandwich, we love our wife, we love our husband, we love that dog. Really? And you love that show on Netflix too? You know, it's like, all right, so there's lots of different treatments of love. So now we're looking at this energy that might be in us, and so say we now are saying to ourselves, oh, there's so many things that I've done. You know, I mean, if I hadn't have drank so much over those years, I might not have run the car off the road and gotten that accident and put us in this bind where we have to pay the insurance company extra money every month, you know. And no, these are not life stories. These are examples. But that holds, you know, as far as, yeah, you're right, you did. And again, every situation we're in, we walk right up to it. There's nobody forcing you to do anything in that regard. You're still choosing it. No matter how much force they put on you, you have the ability in you, you might not know it, but to choose for yourself. Anybody that tries to limit choice is, again, it's a limit that is being placed on somebody to give you less of that energy, because that's a very powerful thing. I talk about being out there and doing things, making choices. That's the biggest thing. Making choices that are for you and not for others, right? You're not trying to be accountable. You're not going to set yourself up for this victim mentality crap we talked about last time. So anyway, back to this thing where we have it in us already, right? So now, maybe it's something like that. You know, maybe it wasn't some kind of, or maybe when you were young, I'm sorry, triggering moment, but say you were molested or something as a child, and in your mind, you somehow think that, that maybe you're guilty because somebody else had it, or maybe you felt like you enjoyed it somehow, and that's still stuck in there, oh my God, you know, because, you know, that part of it, remove the conditions, is fine. But the conditions were all effed up, right? So, yeah, that can sit kind of weird, and for a very valid reason. I'm not trying to discount the reason in the way that I said that like that. But it brings us to how do we get rid of that? And so we're going to now go to forgiveness, which I'm going to go back to canon law. Forgiveness is a very difficult thing for, of all the people this is going to trigger, the very religious, because they have this thing called sin. And sin, like morality itself, is an arbitrary point placed based on the conditions of, in this case, religious belief, and that is then demonstrated in what's called faith, and then, or it could be based on also the society has changed, so now maybe you can't have them hung, drawn, and quartered, or whatever you might have done 500 years ago. Now they just go to an electric chair, or maybe they don't even do that anymore because that's not even cool because it was inhumane. Now they just, in some other way, into their life. And you're basically on your way of also deciding this whole thing about being all about life and then all about death. So that's your own work. You deal with that your own. But the point is that when you have that stark of a duality, that in any moment you could make a choice that you are effed for later, right? Well, that's not a way to go through life, if you ask me personally. Personally, me, not you, not judging you. In fact, I'm saying the exact opposite. You don't need to have, I don't believe for me, I need to have that above me. That I need to have that kind of, the guidance thing is wonderful. You know, does your law originate from an empowering source, or does your law originate from some judgmental source? So if you have sin, you're automatically assuming there's things that I'm going to do wrong. And when I do those things that you already know, after you made me, apparently you need a new schematic, I do them, and now I'm damned. Okay, now I'm not making fun of that, but I wanted to say it pretty stark because that's what? I mean, there's no other way to really look at that. I mean, there are plenty of ways to look at that, but in the way that I used it, I think I make my point that it puts you at a sort of competitive disadvantage when it comes to getting ahead, as far as in yourself, Now, in the world, you might be wonderful, because you're doing the thing that everybody says. You're being accountable to all those things. That stuff that I call social conditioning that starts from the time you're 3 years old and you're aware of yourself, and then you're told what to do, what is good. And again, that's subject to that arbitrary point over here. I'm showing the trees. And it can be anything from morality to the religious belief itself. I've been on for a half hour apparently. I should probably wrap this up. So that's problematic there, because what's going to happen next is we're going to move into the space of giving forgiveness to yourself, which in itself is kind of hard for me to wrap around in its totality if you're already in a position to being judged for what your decision is about to be. So with that in mind, we'll just move to the fact that we are no longer a religious mindset. Now we're in a spiritual mindset, one that gives you guidelines, and one that gives you examples, and one that gives you love and empowerment and shows you the world is wonderful and you are part of it. You are not separate from it. It is all connected. All these kind of things that we hear in the more updated versions of spirituality that we have today. And largely the community that I engage, largely the community I have on Facebook, but really the only community that I engage with. So now back to just that community as far as, okay, we're good with the fact that we can figure ourselves. So then how to do that? Well, look, you were in every position, yes. And when we make mistakes, again, however that choice was made, whether we literally caved and did what other people said, or they forced us to do, literally holding us down, or any level of that, again, levels. So that level is irrelevant. If it hits you like that, that's what's important. It's what I call in my work the relative level of pain. When you reach that, it becomes equalized for everybody, because it does within the person this complete shattering of sorts that at that point needs to be reassembled, you could say, in some way. In other words, recreate your reality. So those things that we've chosen to do, that looking back, maybe I knowingly did that wrong. Maybe, I really was taking that thing. It wasn't just borrowing it. Or maybe I stole pens at the office, or here's 2 cardinals right here. Whatever it is, that was this thing we call the past, and it doesn't exist. And that does not mean that you're not accountable to yourself for those, or maybe accountable to others if you did something that violated them. We have to respect the law, right? We can't just all speed down the highway at 5,000 miles an hour because we have a more powerful car, and expect that to be an enlightened decision, connecting those two there. But so with that in mind, when we're looking at the stuff that we've done, we have to look at it like, all right, well, the context of my life was this at the time, and these are the conditions. I did this thing. I can't imagine I'd do that thing right now. But see, now the context of your life has changed too. You're not coming at it from the same space, because that context is a derivative of your conscious expression to the world. It's coming from that non-linear dynamic in the first place, and conditions are pretty much standard. They're stock, they're things. They're like, yes, I have to pay the rent. Yes, I have this other stuff, right? But the context of your life is, well, is that a big problem in your life? Because you, in this very simple example, if I have to pay rent and I don't have enough, well, in the context of your life, do you have friends and family that might be able to help you? Or if you don't, yeah, now you got to keep figuring that out. But if you do, that gives you a little release from that. So this is just speaking to the whole question of letting it go. I guess I sort of lost myself here. But if we're going to be able to look at those decisions in a way that we can release them, we have to be able to take that knowing of what we've done and bring it into the future, or whatever, now I'm linear again, but we have to bring it to now and be here now in this moment, and doing that, say, would I do that now? No, I wouldn't. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not an abuser. I'm not a whatever, a war criminal. Granted, these things might also come with additional accountability in the public sector, you could say. I mean, yeah, we all live here, right? I wouldn't have this phone if those things weren't in place. We wouldn't be doing any of this right now. And we're seeing the fragility of that system right now demonstrated by the fact that you all are able to be even on right now because you're not at work or whatever would normally be doing. You're probably not doing that. In fact, probably very few people are doing that, even if they are working. But within that, your context has changed. So maybe you are in a place where you have worked through it. You've somehow seen that those choices, though they might have seemed good at the time, were less than optimal, so to speak, less fittest. And in this case, you actually validated that lack of whatever in your own illusion of thinking that that was okay at the time. I'm pissed off. I can beat the shit out of that guy. Well, no. That you're the part that's wrong here is that you've got an emotional response going on. But granted, people aren't going to think of this stuff in the moment. But I'm just trying to illustrate my point. So the context changes in your life, and you've done some work around that. And I don't mean automatically by saying doing the work that you've had endless amounts of interaction with other people about this. You can do this yourself. It's just coming around to the knowing that you have your own choice in the world, which breaks you away from that. You have a limited ability to do if you already think you're damned on your decision, regardless of how valid you think it is. That sort of puts you in that position no matter if it is the fittest. You're still in that because you never really know until the future arrives. It's not out there. There's no pre-planning. Now, that might trigger some people in some communities, and I understand. This is staying in this sort of space that I work in between science and the esoteric, and so I have different approaches to reality from both that actually jive pretty well if both sides would just listen to each other. Again, to the duality of the world, we're all positioned. I'm a this, you're a that. Whatever. But so within that, you have to have the ability to then, once you've changed, you're no longer doing those things. Once you've changed, you have to forgive that energy. Or you have to forgive yourself for having done that in a way that use it as a way to celebrate. I am releasing this from my life. I am forgiving myself for being bothered by this any longer. I have paid my debt to myself if I had one. I've paid my debt to society if I've had one. It is done. It is complete. I have changed. I'm now going to forgive myself for being bothered by this. And let go of that. See if you can identify that. The energy in your life that is causing this negative attraction to this thing that you did. This thing that happened to you, by you, through you, near you, whatever. It happened in your reality, right? So to you, it's real. Just like, and I'll give full credit to everybody in the religious community, their God is real, and all that is just as real as can be for them. Just like mine is for me. And some people can't accept that, some people can, but how I send it is on me, how it's received is on them. So, it's not being sent from a way of any kind of negativity, just talking here. So anyway, so maybe identify that energy. This thing that's causing me angst. And it's not the actual thing, it's this feel of, or whatever it is. I gotta get that out of there. How do I get that out of there? All right, well, I'm gonna forgive myself for feeling like that, with the knowing in my head that what I'm really doing is laying at rest finally that thing, because it's not here anymore, and I'm not living in that life anymore, and that life truly doesn't even exist. It's only now. We can't show a picture of yesterday. We can take a picture of yesterday, but we can't go get one, a new one. We can't. How could you even have something new in the past? And we can't go to the future either like that. Now, granted, yeah, we have timeline people and all that. I get it. To do those conversations, I have to completely go esoteric and have no respect whatsoever for linear dynamics, you could say. And frankly, to some of the more extreme nonlinear, like with Hoffman, where all of everything in here doesn't exist. We are truly living in a virtual reality, which is fascinating stuff. But and he does it so well, scientifically. I mean, dude earns his chops. So anyway, maybe think of it like that. So we've talked here, I've talked, hopefully you've listened or heard something, I guess, about, we started with we had the light worker question, and I really don't know if I addressed that. I think I did in my way. As far as negativity, shadow self, then shadow self could be that back thing too. Shadow self doesn't always happen to be that. Well, it's always attached to these things. From my approach, bringing in the randomness of the way that I do. So say here's the thing that happens. It doesn't seem like a big deal at the time. You're 9 years old, and your dad, I don't know, you fall down and he laughs. Yeah, we do that, right? In society, we laugh because it's funny for whatever reason we think that's funny, but it is. We all do it, and You know, how many videos have you seen of somebody falling down a flight of steps with a pain, you know, whatever, you know, like guy's probably hurting, but everybody's ha ha ha. So it's a question in and of itself, but be that as it may, we're back to this whole thing of losing my train of thought. These birds are getting to me out here. I've lost. Okay, so the light work community, if it's the shadow self, if you have that random thing happen when you're 9 and your dad laughs at you and you fall down and it doesn't bother you, but then you notice that throughout the course of your life, maybe perhaps that maybe little things bother you and you don't explain it. You're like, I don't understand, man. I'm out and somebody will say this random thing, and for whatever reason it brings this out of me, and I don't get it because I'm not like that all the time. Well, one way of looking at that is there might be a problem like that going on down there. And what's happening here, if you want to go to the chaos theory thing again, you've got linear thought. So here you are at 9 years old, and 10 years old, and 11 years old, and 12 years old, all the way up to today. But this little happened there in that moment, this little spark that actually hits you. But it was so little and slight that that's all it was. But it moves along with you. And over time, as it sort of scratches a little bit, sort of itches, and you go to scratch it, right? Well, now it's unbearable again. Something has caused it to itch, right? Well, so what happens is this thing is with you and it's always present, but then when the rest of the stuff maybe gets a little sideways, this thing becomes apparent, it gets more attraction to it, because now it's sort of reminding you and you don't even know it, at that time your dad laughed at you and you punched the fucker. Sorry, Facebook. See, that kind of energy. Love it. Anyway, so that would be a random event, you know, an attractor there to the negative energy of this experience that is very subtle along the way, but builds up over time because it sort of collects that itch as it goes because it's present with you, and eventually your attraction to it becomes enough to a pop. It goes, similar to like pop, there's an albino, or pop, there's a deaf person born. Now there could be all kinds of other, getting a call, I'm not getting a call. And I'm not trying to talk about the physiological things, I'm just talking about the randomness here. This is all about random occurrences of things that otherwise can't be measured, but there is a pattern. You know, any number of things. Why some people drink and become an alcoholic, quote alcoholic, I don't like that word, or some people drink and they're fine. And of course there's a zillion other little things like I just talked about that are often the cause of all this. And what we do in what I did in psychotherapy as far as drug and alcohol, being a counselor, I became weary of focusing on the effects. We're blaming the alcohol. We're blaming the condition of their life because they're drinking. If we remove the drinking, they'll be fine. That wasn't working. And I didn't address it in that way when I spoke with people, and eventually that led to friction, and so here I am being independent. And not at all in that very linear mindset of that. And so that leads me, I guess, about time to wrap it up, because I sort of lost my train of thought there, as you can imagine. I do this best when I'm talking to somebody else, speaking to somebody else, I should say, because of that dynamic that happens there. I mean, even if the person's agreeing or knows a lot of these things, and at the same whatever level I know I'm at, just in the course of conversation, you have different takes from a different person. They're coming at it now, their context of their life. You know, back to this whole thing about reality. What is real in your world? Well, it's only so real because you believe it, but it might not be real for everybody else. And if you assume it is, then now you're a judge. That's, again, back to that duality, now you're damned. So, whatever. So don't be the judge. And again, sort of disclaimer here at the end, I'm not trying to ruffle anybody's feathers. There's no hidden agenda with the light worker community or the religious community I refer to. If I misidentified the way that I think my people are, whatever that is, or any of these concepts, if they've rubbed you wrong, that wasn't the intention. And please like and share this so that I know that this is, people are watching or whatever. I mean, I know they are. I see the comments afterwards. I thank you. And of course, windindraven.com is my website. If you're somebody out there that, right now I'm doing a thing where it doesn't matter what it is, and I have a very reduced rate through this time, because like myself, like the state of Georgia's deemed me non-essential, and they're not gonna help me out with the stimulus package. I'm not like that. So we can talk about all those things too, if that's the energetic exchange, so to speak. if somebody out there that you know might need something repackaged in the way that I do, so to speak, not telling them what to do, but sort of looking at it this way. I would appreciate that, obviously now. So with that, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go probably sit on the porch for a little while and see what happens on this thing after it's posted. So I will answer any questions down there, but I'd really rather bring them up in the next one because that's how we got to this one today. And the basic questions was the light worker question, as I understood it and as I put it in my words. And then also the question of the shadow self, which came as a separate question originally. And then also forgiveness. And so there we go. So I don't know what will be next. That's where you come in. So over to you. And thanks and have a great day. If you go out, do all the things you're supposed to do for you to keep yourself safe. And you decide those based on guidelines that are out there. Definitely pay attention to what's going on. Just because we might not believe it or you might not believe it doesn't mean others do. And what if you're wrong? You know, so that's back to that thing that I say. The toughest addiction to break is being right. And we all need to remember that every moment. In fact, that might even be right. There might be something harder than that. So that's all I got. Thanks and have a great day.